Hello students, welcome to English class. Today we are going to read third part of sixth chapter. The chapter is This is Geordie's Phone. This we have from Honeydew, NCERT English book of 8th standard. Students, up to first and second part we had read that Geordie's father has been bitten by a rattlesnake. He quickly kills a doe and uses its heart and liver to draw out the poison. And Geordie wonders that what will happen to the little fawn left without a mother in the forest. So he decided to bring the fawn home, and for that he had to convince his family, and he did so. And along with Millville, he goes to the forest to search the fawn. Up to that we had read, and in the second part we had read that searching time. In the meantime, Geordie decided to search the fawn alone without Millville. So he told this Millville and went alone in the forest to search the fawn. And in third part we will read that Geordie will be able to find the fawn or not. He will get success or not. We will read this in third part. So let's start reading. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wandering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. It made no effort to rise or run. Geordie could not trust himself to move. He whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. The story says in this paragraph that Geordie was shocked after having experienced some movements in front of him, and he fell backwards. It was the fawn. The fawn lifted his face with a wide and wondering motion to see Geordie, and stared at him with his liquid eyes. That it left Geordie shook. The fawn was shaking with a slight rapid motion. The fawn sat still and made no effort to run. On the other hand, Geordie could not move too, but he whispered lightly, "It's me." The fawn sniffed and smelled him. Geordie reached out with his hand and laid it on his soft neck. His touch made the fawn excited, and he moved forward in an attempt to be close to Geordie. Geordie put his arms around the fawn, which made the fawn shiver slightly. But he did not stir, which means he was not frightened. Fawn was not frightened, but comforted. It is comforted for him. Further story tells, he stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer, and he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean, and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the phone as high as possible under his arm. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The phone's legs caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his own with freedom. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the phone down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. The paragraph says that Jody caressed the sides of his phone's body, so gently, as if it were as fragile as a china deer. The phone was soft, sleek, and clean, and even possessed a pleasant scent of grass. Jody lifted the phone from the ground in a way that hung his limbs in the air. The phone's legs were quite long, surprisingly long, so Jody had to hold him as high as possible under his arm. And Jody has to take care of its and his face also from the prickling vines. And while reaching home, he had to take rest. For that, he set the phone down on its dangling legs and took a rest for a while. After that, he said, enchanted, "I'll carry you after I get my breath." He remembered his father saying that a phone would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The phone stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few bobbling steps toward him and cried up piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call to it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. Jody, filled with delight as he was hold the phone that he would carry it once. He had taken a bit of rest. Jody recalled that his father had told him that the phone will follow you once you have carried it for a bit first. Jody started walking at a slow pace, and the phone looked as he walked further. Jody came back again to caress it and went forward again. This time, the phone took a few weak steps in Jody's direction as he cried. Although bobbling, Jody was overjoyed by the fact that it was willing to go with him, which made the phone his own. He was so overjoyed that he could not even think properly and clearly. At that moment, Jody wanted to caress it with all his desire, play with it and call it towards him. But he did not want to frighten him. He did not want to alarm him. Then he picked the phone again in his arms and walked effortlessly, without effort. The story tells further. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. When they walked on, the phone followed him at once. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. The distance home was nothing. He could have walked all day and into the night, carrying it and watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the phone to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom, with the phone walking behind him. But at the steps, the phone walked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. This paragraph says, Jody stopped unwillingly as his arms had started aching. So he had to take a rest. The phone followed him as he walked again. Jody would only allow the phone to walk a few steps and then pick it up again. Home was almost near. Jody could have picked it up and watched it follow all day. But he was tired and sweating. A light breeze helped him dry his sweat on that June morning. The sky was so clear that it had been compared to spring water in a blue china cup. He reached the clearing at last, which was green and fresh after the showers last night. It was a bit difficult for him to open the latch of the house, but he could do it once. He set the phone down. At first, he thought of making the phone follow directly into Penny's room, into his father's room, and surprise him. But the phone refused to climb the stairs. So Jody had to pick him up to his father's bedroom. His father was resting there with closed eyes. Then Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him. The phone clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the phone's. He said, "I'm glad you found him." Jody woke his father up and stood beside as Penny turned his head towards him. The phone grasped him firmly. Penny could see Jody's eyes as bright and glowing as the phone's, and expressed his happiness over Jody having been able to find the phone. Penny, his father, was happy to see that Jody is successful in searching the phone. Jody then went to the kitchen. The phone bobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen, safe. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. But it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. It could move nothing of the milk in the gourd. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. In this, Jody went straight to the kitchen after that, and Fawn followed him with his weak steps. In the kitchen, a pan filled with the morning's milk was kept reserved, but cream had formed on it. He skimmed the cream and put it into a jug while he poured the milk in a utensil made of a small gourd. The fawn sniffed the milk as Jody saved the milk from being spilled. The fawn could not drink the milk out of the gourd. He dipped his fingers in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. As long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flicked back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. So what happened in the last paragraph? When fawn was not able to drink the milk out of the gourd, so Jody dipped his finger in the milk and put them in its soft, wet mouth instantly, which the fawn sucked greedily, because he was hungry. Which is why when Jody took his fingers out of its mouth, it cried and hit him with his head. The next time Jody put his fingers in the fawn's mouth, he gently lowered it so as to bring it near the utensil. The fawn became impatient, blew the milk as he sucked it, and made sounds. The fawn was calm till Jody kept his fingers inside the milk, and he drank with eyes closed in satisfaction. Jody felt overwhelmed on feeling its tongue against his hand as his small tail moved back and forth. The milk disappeared quickly, forming foam, which was marked by a bubbling sound. So that was the story about fawn and Jody. In the last, we had read that Jody was successful in search of fawn, and both were happy in the end of the story. So students, I hope you understood. Thank you. Have a nice time.